After Meredith reconnected with her father and he spoke to her, she wasn't sure if she would be asked to do what he asked her to do. "Mother," she breathed, as she broke from the connection and her father went back to hell. I don't know if I can do it," she almost cried. "Meredith, you must," the woman said, getting to her feet. But those innocent people and..." "The innocent?" the mother growled. "They're not innocent. They killed your father. How dare you treat him that way?" She roared and then smacked her daughter across the face. Meredith screamed and fell to the ground. "We're running out of time. They're starting to suspect something. Especially the woman, but not her husband." The woman shivered. "I knew him my whole life. He was such a sick little twit, and yet he was nice to me," she said in a whining voice and rolling eyes. "But you both are." "Don't say that," the woman snapped as she grabbed her daughter's wrists and held them tightly. "Do you want your father to come back and get what rightfully is? Do it. You're your grandfather. Your poor grandfather. He loved you, her father, very much. But that little monster ruined his life. If she ever comes back, I'll whip her until she bleeds to death," the woman screamed, holding the child's wrist tighter fully. "Mother, that hurts," Meredith said. "Oh, sorry. The point is, we are running out of time. History might as well repeat itself. What if I die this time? Then it would be up to you," cried the woman, now on her knees, as if she was begging for forgiveness. Meredith let out a deep sigh and rolled her eyes as she pushed her mother away. "Fine, I'll do it," she grunted. Then she started to leave the room. "You will thank me for this someday, Mary. Don't worry, honey. You'll soon someday be a princess. And who knows, maybe even a queen," her mother said as she put on a smirk that would stay on for a long time. Meredith had to prepare for when she had to leave to be with them. She would be told by the plan from her father every week. He looked to see how he was doing. "Being in hell must have really been a pain sometimes, huh?" she asked, giving her mother one afternoon as they were cutting onions. "Yes, I've been there," she replied. "You have?" Meredith said, almost dropping the knife. "I've been in a living hell, dear. Not the kind your father's in." "Thank God for that," she sputtered, as they poured the onions into a salad bowl and they tossed them around with the other things. After having dinner that night, Meredith was excited but scared of what was going to happen next. "Mother," she started to speak. "What if I see her?" "See who?" "The one who killed grandfather," Meredith said, eating more salad. "Don't worry, dear. At the end of that wretched family will be in the right places for when they are dead, and the kids she'll be back. And I'll have my time with her," the woman laughed evilly. "Meredith," she then said, holding her hand gently, "I know you're scared, but you're going into time, honey, and if you need me, I'll be on the other side," her mother said kindly, looking deep into the mysterious eyes. "I know. Can I see the future of what it all looks like?" "Of course. Now get your things. It's time," the blonde-haired woman said, clapping her hands and sitting down on her bowl, running up the stairs. She brought down a large black and some horrible ugly tattered clothes and instructed her daughter to wear them. After getting ready, the woman quickly took her daughter into a secret room in the basement. Everything was cold and dark, except for the large glass mirror that hung in the air towards the back of the room. "That's it!" Meredith cried in excitement, as she started to run for it, but her mother fiercely pulled her back. "Don't touch anything until I say so," she growled. Coming up to the mirror, they saw each other's reflection, and the adult admired herself as the child just stood there and rolled her eyes. "Step back, child," she instructed Meredith to do so. "Monica Pirish," the woman cried as a gust of wind came from the mirror and then started to calm down. "Whoa!" Meredith exclaimed, getting to her feet and looking at the mirror in excitement. In the mirror, they both started to see a glimpse of a new family they never knew. A tall man was in the middle with a little girl who had black hair. She looked to be about 6, and he was spinning her around in the air, and they were both laughing happily. Then a small clip of the little name of the little boy, who was all alone quiet in the woods. He was small, scrumpy, and he had a stick to his hand. Walking a little little further. He then heard a crunch under his shoe and looked to see what it was. Standing behind him was a skull, and it was pointing underneath the ground. He then screamed and ran back to his home. "You cannot let that happen," explained the woman, as she waved a finger at the mirror and glaring at her daughter. "I won't." There were some more clips until a girl with blonde, wet hair stood and the woman with green eyes and black hair who was crying. "What did you do?" the woman yelled. "Oh my God!" the blonde-haired woman said in shock. "That's her!" she growled. She pointed at the girl with blonde hair. The woman let out a deep sigh and turned around to hug her daughter tightly, and then told her she had to go in. Before Meredith walked in, her mother stopped her one last time. "Oh dear, yes? When you have a chance, tell the man, I dare not speak his name, that Jessica's looking forward to our family reunion." Months had passed, and Shigo and Dia and Amy's nightmares stopped. No longer she had seen that sad wet girl with blonde hair, and showing Shigo her horrible past. Draken treated Shigo like a queen more and more each day, and she gave him what he wanted at the end of the day, to say thank you, and she was happy to know that she was doing her job from his deep romantic moans. Every day Shigo's lower stomach, which held her baby, was getting bigger and bigger. Once her stomach was firm, she would then feel mini kicks every now and then, and it made Shigo really happy. One afternoon, Shigo felt like relaxing, and Draken decided to come be with her. "Hello, sweetheart," he said, sitting down next to her and kissing her forehead. "Hey, what are you up to?" Draken asked. "Nothing. Bored. Reading magazines." "Aw, the baby kicked again?" she then said happily as she touched her stomach. "Ooh, let me feel," Draken said in an excited voice, as he took his hand and rubbed it all over the place where the baby was kicking. "Oh my God," Draken whispered, smiling as he felt another kick. "That's so great," he said, even more happy looking up at Shigo. "Having a baby feels great," she moaned, as she was getting tired. "What is it like to have someone growing inside of your body?" Draken asked, as she gently ran his fingers down her face. "It feels different, but good way. But I'm scared though," Shigo said, cuddling under Draken's arms. "Why are you scared?" he asked in a protective voice. "Because, what if I die from childbirth?" Shigo almost screamed. "Shigo," he chuckled, patting her head, "you're not going to die from childbirth, I can assure that." "But what if something goes wrong?" she said, hugging him and buried her hand in her chest. "Nothing is going to happen," Draken said softly. "Only good things will happen. You'll be giving birth to our beautiful baby," he said as he took her head gently into his, and she smiled as she leaned up and kissed him romantically. More months had passed, and Shigo was soon to expect her baby, and she was nervous as ever. Pacing around her room, her feet were getting tired. Draken had once done work down in his lab, and the henchmen were working out. "Shigo, what are you doing?" he asked. "Thinking," she said shortly, as she paced the room more quickly. "You do know that being on your feet all day isn't good for the baby," Draken instructed, as he walked over and held her arms, making her stop walking. "Sorry, it's just, Shigo then cried, as she almost dropped to her knees, but Draken caught her. "Shigo, are you alright?" he asked. In a panic, he brought her over to the couch. "Yeah, I'm fine. It's just I have, Shigo said, raising one eyebrow. "You're getting your first contractions," Draken said, smiling. "I am?" Shigo said, even more happy. "Yes, you are. Oh, sweetheart, this is exciting," Draken said, hugging Shigo tightly as she hugged him back. "Our baby's coming very fast," Shigo said, looking deep into his eyes. "I know. When the baby is born, it might be one of the happiest days of my life," Draken said, looking back at her. "Thank you," Shigo whispered. "Thank you for what?" he asked. "Thank you for creating a human life with me. Without you, none of this would be possible," Shigo then said, feeling a little dizzy, resting her head on his chest as he ran his fingers through her hair. "You're welcome, my love. I have always wanted to start a family with you, ever since the first time I met you, Shigo." And with that, Shigo had lied down on the couch, and Draken got her a blanket, and she drifted off to sleep. More weeks had came and passed, and Abby herself was very excited about Shigo's birth. I'm so excited. My little boy's gonna be a father, Abby said happily as she cut some onions in the kitchen with him. I know, it just happened so quick. One day I'm a kid and the next thing I know, I'm trying to take over the... Mom, could you pass me over the knife? Draken said quickly. He almost let himself slip. She looked suspiciously at him. What's wrong with that one? Oh, this one? Draken asked nervously. It's just getting dull. Fine, here, she said, giving her the knife. So when will Shigo be delivering her baby? I think in a few weeks. She's been doing well. She started to have contractions too, Draken said, cutting some more onions. Oh, wonderful. I feel bad for her, even though they do hurt. I mean, when I was pregnant with you, and when I was ready to give birth to you, you just didn't want to come out, Abby laughed. What was I like as a baby? Well, let's see, Abby sighed, looking out the window. You were always a good baby. You made me tired, but I kept my head high. How did I make you tired? Draken asked, as he dumped a little more onions into the salad dish. Well, when I was feeding you, you would never stop suckling, and you seemed to always be hungry. So you would sometimes be feeding off of me for like hours. Are you serious? Draken chuckled. Dead serious, Abby said, laughing back. I remember one time when you were little, I couldn't quite find you and you were about to be lunch for a rattlesnake was in the backyard of the house, but I saved you. Your father was at work, Abby muttered quietly. Draken felt a small drop of sadness in his mind, but it washed her away. Draken then helped his mother get dinner ready, need some more, and he was about to leave when she stopped him at the doorway. I see you in him, Drew. You see who? Draken asked, turning around. I see your father in you, Drew. You're a splitting image of him. Just don't make the same mistakes as he made. You have an amazing wife, and she loves you very much. I could see it in her eyes. Don't ever lose her, Drew, Abby whispered, and with that she walked past him and looked at him and smiled, then left him in the kitchen speechless. More weeks passed, and Shigo had more contractions. They would hurt, but only for a little bit, but she was happy that her baby was coming on its way. One stormy night, Shigo finished having dinner and took a shower. Abby went to bed early, and Draken was on his bed reading a book peacefully. How to Take Over the World for Dummies, Shigo said, drying her hair, as she read the name of the book he was reading. It teaches you a lot, and no, I know what you're thinking. I'm not dumb, he said, turning the pages some more. Sure you're not, Shigo said, playing around. Shigo then brushed her teeth and combed out her hair, then put on her pajamas and came in and lay next to Draken. Hello, darling, he said, kissing the top of her head as she was rested her head on his chest. Draken put the book away and held Shigo. Hopefully just a few more days, Shigo said in a dreamy voice. Until the baby comes, you will be a good mother, Draken said gently. Thank you, and you will be a very good father, Shigo said, smiling at him. I hope so. What do you mean by hope so? Why wouldn't you be a good father? Shigo asked. I just fear sometimes. Well, since we are supervillains, I fear sometimes that if our children ever find out, they'll never forgive us. And I don't want to get involved into something like my father did. And then look what happened. Oh, Draken, don't be ridiculous. You know something like that won't happen to you. Or at least I hope not, Shigo gulped. In some way, I think Dementor, Draken said, changing the subject. Why? Shigo almost screamed, sitting up. Because, Draken said gently, pulling her back down as she could rest. Without him capturing me, we would have never fallen in love, he said, looking deep into Shigo's eyes. Oh, Drew, Shigo then moaned, then looked deep into his. They soon came closer and their lips just met, and they started to kiss. That night, Shigo didn't feel good at all. Her stomach was bothering her and she was in a deep sweat. She flashed open her eyes every now and then and glanced at the clock. 1 a.m. it read. Shigo sighed in an annoyed way. When will this pain be over? She said to herself, trying to get back to sleep. But then she let out a horrible cry of pain as she sat up in bed. Draken! Shigo then screamed. He flew out of the bed in shock. Shigo, what's wrong? He asked as if she was being attacked. I'm going into labor, Shigo said as the pain got worse. Oh crap, alright, Mom! Draken then yelled down the hall. The first thing you do is get your mother, Shigo said, starting to sweat. She can help. Okay, now you have to start taking deep breaths, alright? In and out, Draken said, helping Shigo up as they started to leave the room. What's wrong? Abby said, coming out of the darkness, looking worried as she held a robe around her to keep warm. Shigo's going into labor. I need you to call the hospital immediately and tell them Shigo's in labor and she's early, he said as he took Shigo down the rugged stairs and comfortable as they could go, so Shigo wouldn't have to be in more pain. This really hurts, Shigo wailed as she held Draken's hands tighter. I know, darling, but Mother is going to make the call and we are leaving right now, Draken said, leading her out of the lair and took her car. Abby then came rushing out with the raincoat, and for one of her sons she couldn't go out of the hospital wearing their PJs. Abby then threw him the keys and got him in the back of the Shigo, and helped her as Draken started to drive to the hospital. Along the way, Shigo was crying horribly, and Draken was driving very fast. It prayed that the baby would hold out a little longer so she can give birth at the hospital. It hurts! Shigo screamed as she threw her head back in the white leather seat, and beads of sweat rolled down her pale face. Don't worry, I'm driving as fast as I can, Shigo. Just hang in there a little longer, Draken said as he drove a bit faster. Take deep breaths, honey, deep breaths, Shigo said. Abby said, holding Shigo's hand, in case if Shigo needed something to grab onto, to which she did. More rain started to pour down hard on their car as Draken finally reached the hospital. Helping her out of the car, he slowly walked her in, but in a quick way to the hospital, and some nurses rushed over. These women are here to help, Shigo. You go with them and I'll be with you at the moment, Draken said, smiling at Shigo, who just let out another deep, sharp cry. The first nurse, who had sandy-colored hair, helped Shigo into a white table with a light pink blanket on and led her and Abby down the hall. Abby held Shigo's hand and smiled as she kept her safe. Don't worry, miss. You'll be giving birth soon, the second nurse with hot, pink, spiky hair said. Shigo looked up at her and saw her whole face was pierced. Oh, God, Shigo groaned as she looked down again and was disgusted by the nurse was pushing her. Draken parked the car and then ran back in the hospital. Excuse me, sir, where did those nurses take that crying woman? Draken asked the man who was sitting in the waiting room and saw everything happen. That way. He pointed, not even caring as Draken ran off. He got lost for a second, but then found the direction again, and when he heard Shigo's poor screams. In a room there was a woman who was about to give birth. The nurses spread Shigo's legs and put an IV in her arm. Ah! Shigo glared at one of them. Was the pink-haired nurse injected the needle. Sorry, ma'am. This should stop some of the pain. Aren't you going to get a doctor in here? Abby then asked nervously, seeing Shigo was in horrible pain. Yes, of course. Excuse me, the pink lady said, and then she ran out of the room as the other two nurses were preparing for the birth. Did it hurt like this when you had Drew? Shigo asked in a dry mouth as she looked at Abby, who was wiping her brands from her forehead. Oh, yes, he was tough, Abby said, making Shigo laugh a little. He was a good baby. Good baby never wanted to leave me when he got his milk, but he came out all right. Shigo laughed even harder. This time Abby was happy because she was distracting her from the pain. Shigo, Draken then said. He flew open the doors and saw his wife, panting heavily on the bed. Hi, Shigo moaned as she came over and kissed her. Are you all right? Draken asked, now happy to be at her side. Yes, I guess they've given me some painkillers because the pain is starting to ease away, but just a little, Shigo said, wincing. Good. Well, apparently you are a little early, Draken then said, but he was all right with that. A month ago they had gone to the doctors and they said that Shigo might give birth in a week from now, but neither of them cared that they were just happy that the days weren't so far apart or behind, otherwise there would be a problem. Shigo then cried in pain as tears streamed down her face as she started to breathe heavily. Sir? The nurse said, coming back and looking at Draken. Yes? He asked. Well, we have some news. What's the news? Draken asked in a confused voice. We don't have a doctor at the moment to help us with this woman's birth, but... You don't have any doctors? Abby asked in shock, coming towards the pink-haired woman. This can't be possible. This is a huge hospital, and you have no doctor to help her with the baby? What about the doctor we applied for? Abby asked, getting red in the face because she felt bad for Shigo and Draken. Mother, calm down. It'll be all right, Draken then said, coming over and walking over to her back of the chair. But that's impossible, Abby said, trying to argue, but Draken looked at her and told her no. What are we gonna do? Draken said, running his hands through his hair quickly and pacing back and forth. Drew, Shigo then said with a wide smile, and they all knew she had thought of something. What? Draken asked. She made her jump. You're a doctor. You can deliver the baby, Shigo said happily. Draken's face then turned from a smile to a frown. I can't. I don't have a certified license to do that, he said. I don't care right now if you want your children to be born and happy because they're coming right now. You get your butt over here and deliver this child, Shigo screamed, because of more pain as her hands start to glow. And Abby jumped back a little in the chair, and Draken knew she meant business. Okay, I need to get some gloves and gear, Draken said, as more nurses rushed in and handed him the swivel chair and a little light blue hat for his head, and the same for his feet and 2 white gloves. Hurry! Shigo then started to call as he came over and spread her legs some more. Okay, Shigo, you're gonna have to help me out there, alright? Draken then said. He lifted up her gown, revealing her area. Draken's face was steady, but he got loose and put down and got sick. Draken, are you okay? Shigo asked, feeling dizzy. I'm okay, Draken then said, getting up and cleaning himself off. I don't know if I could do this. You have to. This baby's coming, Shigo wailed. Shigo then roared in pain as Draken built up his courage and sat in front of her. Okay, Draken then gulped. You have to push on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, push now! And then with that, poor Shigo cried some more as she started to push. With the heavy cries and support for Abby and Drew, and the nurses, they finally started to see the head, and Draken was going to get all sick over everyone, but he held it back. Come on, sweetie, I can see your baby. Push some more, Draken then said, cheering her on. Finally, they saw more and more of the baby, and the head started to come out, then slipped out the rest of the body. When the baby was born, it fell gently in the Draken's hands. He happily cried with joy. Abby, who was very proud, held Shigo's hand and told her that the baby was born. Shigo knew the truth when she had heard the child cry. Oh, let me see, Shigo said weakly. Wait, Shigo then said, sitting up, feeling something coming down inside her. Draken, I think I'm gonna have another baby, she wailed. Again? Draken and Abby both said in the exact same time. Shigo cried more as blood rushed from her inside. Draken then kissed the top of his newborn child and handed to the nurse to clean them up. Draken then put on some new gloves and helped Shigo deliver the next child. I can't believe it, Shigo. You had twins, he said, smiling happily, as the second baby slipped down and screamed loudly. Congratulations, Shigo, Abby said, smiling at her, as if her mother would. Thank you, Abby, Shigo whispered, smiling back. Draken was so happy he'd never been happier in his entire life. The nurses were happy as well. You have 2 beautiful children, the pink-haired nurse said, popping some gum, and Shigo just rolled her eyes. Draken, on the other hand, came over to his children, and they both were crying. They were waving their tiny arms and legs in the air. We still have to cut the umbilical cord, the blonde-haired nurse replied, as she gave Draken a pair of scissors. He eventually cut the cords, and they fell to the ground. Draken then picked up both of his children and walked over to Shigo, who was crying because she was so happy. Draken then placed one of his newborns in her open arms, and then he sat next to her. Oh, this one's a girl, Shigo said joyfully, looking at her new baby who was looking around. Shigo spread her little legs and smiled more because she found out she was right. She was a girl. Draken, on the other hand, looked at his baby, which he held in his hands, and was kicking his legs wildly in the air. Draken unraveled the baby's wet blanket, and he smiled to see that he had a son. Looks like we got what we wanted, Draken said, as a tear of happiness rolled down his cheek, and Shigo leaned over and kissed him fully on the lips. Oh, they're so adorable, Abby said, coming over and letting her son be with his new family. "These are your grandkids, Mom," Draken said, as Abby held the first time her first baby grandson. "Oh, Drew, he just looks like you and Shigo," Abby said as she tickled his tummy, and he waved his legs and blinking around the room. "And did you both say you had a baby girl as well?" Abby said, giving her back her grandson to her son. "Yes, this is probably your baby granddaughter," Shigo said, smiling and handing her newborn to her mother-in-law. "Oh, she's beautiful, Shigo. You gave her your eyes, and Drew gave you the sun, his nose and ears. It runs in the family." Draken laughed quietly as Shigo smiled, taking her baby girl back. That day everyone was happy, yet so very tiring. Shigo needed her rest and the babies were fed for the first time, and it wore Shigo out, but Draken helped, and so Draken and Shigo decided to name their children Ryan and Allison. After everything was said and done and the babies went for a small checkup, and it was around 5 in the morning, and some of the real doctors had come in and took care of the new children. But not everything went as according to plan. It wasn't until they found out little helpless Allison's heart was beating very slowly, and it had to be an incubator, and the doctors did some tests and pulse on her heart to see if she'd be alright. But little did they know that later on, that a miracle was going to occur, and it saved little Allison's life. More tears came back to Shigo, those worn, tired eyes, when one of the doctors walked over and gently took the little happy Allison out of her arms and out of the room. "I want my baby back! I want her back!" Shigo then called as she sat up straight and tried to get out of bed, but Draken stopped her. "Shigo, Allison's going to be alright. They are going to check on her heart, sweetheart. Don't worry, she'll be fine. I promise," Draken then said, laying her back down gently. Abby, who was playing with her new grandson, wrapped him in a light blue soft baby blanket and handed him kindly to Draken, who was covered in blood but happy. "Here, I think Ryan's hungry," Draken said, as the baby waved his hands in the air, clinged onto Draken and tried to suck. Shigo and Draken along with Abby laughed as Shigo unbuttoned her front of the top, and Draken handed her Ryan. "That's a good boy. Get as much milk as you can eat, sweetheart," Shigo said in a sweet mothering voice. Shigo then placed Ryan's lips under her breast, and he vigorously started to suck on her to get his food. Draken happily sat down in the chair next to Shigo, who was still on the bed, and he held her hand as they both watched tenderly to their new son, being fed for the first time. "I'm so proud of you, Shigo," Draken said, rubbing her hand. "Thank you, and I thank you for helping me deliver this family safely into the world," Shigo then said in a tired voice, as she rested her head back and smiled at Draken, who then watched his son and smiled. "He is already a good boy." "Yes, he is." "I just hope Allison's okay," Shigo then said, worried. "I do too," Draken said, biting his lower lip. "How did I know something bad was going to happen?" Shigo moaned. Draken didn't answer, as he just let out a deep sigh and buried his head in his hands. After 5 minutes of silence, Ryan was still getting fed from Shigo, and Abby was reading a book. Draken was pacing around the room and then told Shigo that he was going to see if Allison was alright. Walking out of the room, he asked one of the nurses where the baby was, and they directed him to a quiet room in the dark hall. Draken was a little worried because above him, the lights were flickering and making electrical noises. "She's in here. You may spend as much time as you like," the blonde-haired nurse said, kindly opened the door, and Draken walked in. Looking around, he felt so horrible and sad as he wanted to do was cry. In the middle of the room, there was a small glass rectangle-shaped box. "Allison," he whispered, as he walked over and looked inside. There lay the beautiful, helpless baby girl. Her eyes were closing, and she was still unclothed, and Draken wished he could give her a little blanket. There was a heart monitor next to her box, and it was reading slowly. Tubes and suction cups were attached to her cold ice skin. Looking around her pale chest, it was moving very slowly up and down. She was breathing very slowly as well. Draken didn't want to leave his daughter's side, so he quickly pulled over a chair and sat next to her. "I'm so sorry, Allison," Draken whispered, as he took off one of his gloves and reached his hands in and held his baby's hands for the first time. Seeing her like this broke his heart. She didn't deserve this, and Draken would do anything to switch places with her, so she could live a normal life. Allison looked at like both her parents. She had light blue eyes and a small bit of black hair on the top of her head. God, let her be all right, Draken thought, as he bit his lower lip and started to cry. Please let her be all right. Please, I beg you, he prayed as he rubbed his daughter's little small hand that was limp. The monitor was beating slowly and the room was getting colder. Draken had noticed her little body was starting to shiver, and he wanted to cover her body the cold so badly. The least thing Draken wanted to do was for Allison to get sick. That would just make stuff worse. Looking down, he got up and looked around the room for a little blanket for his daughter. He saw a light pink one and opened the glass box and laid it across his daughter's body. I hope this helps, Draken said, smiling, as he leaned down and kissed her forehead and closed the box. After Ryan was done getting his milk, Shiga was happy and helped him burp. He is so adorable, Abby cooed, and then watched him smile and laugh in Shigo's arms. He looks just like Drew, Shigo said. Yes, he does. You'll be a very good mother, Shigo, Abby said in an encouraging voice. Thank you, Shigo said, as she started to feel sleepy. You need your rest. I'll put Ryan over here in the cart, Abby said, as she rolled over a baby cart that was full of warm, soft blankets and laid him there as he started to get sleepy too. Thank you, Shigo then whispered, closed her eyes and started to dream.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.